stay on with us to help take care of them going into the future. Thank you very much. Next up, we have a public hearing to consider an ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 2400 and 2500 of map number 36-05-18-DA. They've all cleared the room before I've even read this admonishment, but I'm going to read it anyway. At this time, I will open the public hearing to consider this application as just described from our agenda. We'll begin the hearing with a staff report, followed by a presentation by the applicant, statements made by persons in favor of the application, statements by persons in opposition to the application, and an opportunity for additional comments by the applicant and staff. After that has occurred, the public comment portion will be closed, and the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. Is there anyone present who wishes to challenge the authority of the council to hear this matter? Do any councilors wish to abstain from participating in this hearing or declare a potential conflict of interest? Are there any councilors who wish to disclose discussions, contacts, or other ex parte information they have received prior to this meeting regarding the application? In this hearing, the decision of the council will be based upon specific criteria which are set forth in the Development Code. All testimony which apply in this case are noted in the staff report. If you would like a copy of the report, please write that on a note to the city manager and one will be provided. It's important to remember that if you fail to raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The hearing will now proceed with a report from staff. Hi, Brad.
Good evening. Mayor and council have about 6 slides here to introduce you to this project. So the application is a property line vacation between 2 lots right downtown in the core of the historic district on G Street. So on the screen, highlighted in yellow, are the 2 subject parcels that we're talking about. This is the G Street here along the north side. Let me pull up our red pointer here. So the request is to allow for this line here where you see this red Z for that property line to be removed. And the purpose is because the applicant is considering a building expansion. And this relates to your goals by facilitating sustainable and manageable growth. So here is the Goodness Gracious catering. You're probably all familiar with it. So the lot line more or less runs here along the edge of the building. They all have this accompanying outdoor seating area out there today. And this is just a zoomed in request. You can kind of see the parking that's adjacent to the alley on the south side. And then there's the seating area here. The existing building is right on the line. Oregon statute doesn't allow you to build over property lines. So for any kind of expansion, that line would need to be removed. The code says that the council has to look at these 2 things if you're going to approve a property line vacation. Does the resulting property configuration create a substandard condition relative to the requirements of the code? And number 2, is it contrary to the public health, safety, welfare, and convenience of any other part of Article 17? We did receive, as a result of the public notice for this application, 1 comment. Not sure if that's what Julie is handing out now, but we have a letter that was received from Hyla Lipson, Executive Director of the Grants Pass Museum of Art, who did express a concern about the potential impacts of this removal on the walkway that is between G Street and the alley. That was the only comment that we received as a result of the public notice. The call to action, there is no cost implication. You have until July 30th technically to make a decision on this. Staff has looked at the 2 criterion that are required, and we find that it does comply. The property line vacation is not accompanied by any kind of development right now. So I think that the concern regarding either an easement or some other utilization of that walkway was probably more appropriately addressed at the time of a development permit. I think what's before you tonight is the question of should the lot line be removed or not. You can put conditions on this type of application. We didn't recommend any from a staff standpoint. Both properties are owned by the same property owner. And like I said, at the time of development permit, if there are issues relating to preservation of an easement or pedestrian access, those can be addressed at that time. So we have a recommended motion for you there and also in your packet.
Thank you. Questions for Brad? Rob?
So currently the walkway, the property owner now could essentially close up that walkway now and be within their rights, right? Like it's not city owned, it's not a public right of way, it's private.
That's correct.
So the property owner could just shut that down tomorrow.
Yeah, and I should be clear that I haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't seen a survey that actually specifically identifies, where that's at. But visually, it does appear that it's on this property, yes.
Thank you.
Rick?
Thank you, Brad. Since this is in the Central Business District, CBD, we have no requirements for parking, and yet when they combine the lots, I noticed in the aerial photograph 7 cars parked in the back of the lot. You indicated we could theoretically make requirements or conditions, but we have no authority in order to recommend that they maintain some degree of parking. Is there any opportunity for that?
No, there really wouldn't be with this application. You have to make, any conditions that you put have to be directly correlated to the request to remove the property line. That's the application that is being submitted right now. When you're talking about parking, does the property line being there or not being there affect that? Probably not. That's staff's perspective.
So is there an opportunity later when that comes in for development, we could make known our desires and an opportunity to provide something, or is at a later date in a separate action?
At this point, the Community Development Department has not received any other applications related to this property. This is the only one. So to answer your question, it really kind of depends on what type of application would come in the future. A lot of those applications are just staff level approval.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I assume that both lots have the same property owner.
Yes.
And the other question is this the kind of thing that has gone by any other committee like UAPC or HBSC?
It has not. The development code does not require property line vacations to go to any other body. It just says that the city council is the decision-making body.
Great, thanks.
Other questions for Brad? All right, is the applicant here? Or somebody here to speak on their behalf?
They were informed, but apparently not. So, thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in favor of this application? I think, is the mic on?
It's been a while since I've been in here.
Thank you.
I'm the executive director of the museum, and so I want to make it clear that we're not against the lot, vacating the lot line. In fact, it's kind of an exciting idea. What our concern is that walkway, and it's been there forever, and the public uses it. In fact, it was a driveway for a long time. And so I'm probably premature, it probably needs to go to the building planning thing, but I just wanted to sort of say that the museum wishes to keep the walkway. I don't know how else to put it. And as far as the parking goes, there's actually 12 spaces back there, and they're all rented from the owner of the property. So,
Questions for Hyla? Rob?
Hi, Hyla. Does the museum have a back door or a rear entrance?
yes, the museum has a back door, but it's a very steep stairway. So for example, if we were having to bring in exhibit material, we wouldn't bring it in that door because it's almost straight up and down. We do own the gallery, which is next door, but to get in, the gallery's full of, it's like your store, it's full of stuff. And we rent the shoe store, that's our tenant, and it would be inappropriate to traipse through her store. So obviously it's a convenience thing, and I don't know whether, and we did talk to the people who are requesting this, and we asked if there was any plans, and they don't have everything in concrete form, so they couldn't really say, gosh, we could, because right now the walkway's about 8 feet wide, and it could probably be narrower, so there's a lot of activity that could probably work. So I just didn't want you to think that we were negative about it, but I did want to sort of say why we want our easement. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Rick?
Hyla, how often during the course of the year do you use it? Once a month or once a week, or the walkway?
Oh, we use it every day, and we're not the only ones that use it. People go back and forth through that. It's like from the alley to the G Street. And if you're eating on H Street, that's the way to get to G Street. So there's a lot of traffic that goes in and out of that area. And the other thing is the shoe store entrance backs up to the end of the walkway, and then the boutique entrance, you can see in the picture, its entrance is actually in the walkway. So there's a couple of little considerations that probably have to be made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the application? All right. Does staff have any further comments? No? Okay, council, then it matters now before you for your consideration. Brian?
I move to adopt the ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 2400 and 2500 of map number 36-05-18-DA and have it read by title only, first reading.
Is there a second? DJ with the second. All right, discussion? All right, let's vote on reading the ordinance. Brian, you're up first.
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
All right, let's have that first reading.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass vacating the common property lines between tax lots 2400 and 2500 of map number 36-05-18-DA.
Thank you. Valerie?
I move to adopt the ordinance vacating the common property line between tax lots 2400 and 2500 of map number 36-05-18-DA and have it read by title only, second reading.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Vanessa with the second. Any discussion? All right, we're going to vote. Valerie, you're up first.
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Next up, council action. We have consideration of an ordinance amending the municipal code, chapter 9.04.010, adoption of the city building code and short title.
So we only did a first reading on that.
Oh, I'm
Wait.
sorry, I didn't have Julie read it again. Sorry.
An ordinance of the council of the city of Grants Pass vacating the common property lines between tax lots 2400 and 2500 of map number 36-05-18-DA.
Thank you, I always forget that. Who is presenting on? Is that Joe? Okay,
I thought you still had work to do.
okay, no, sorry, I didn't realize.
Mayor, Council, Joe Hyatt, Fire Marshal of the City of Grants Pass. We're just coming back to you again to present with the proposed wildfire hazard mitigation for buildings in the urban interface in the fire hazard zone. Just kind of a review of a little bit what we talked about before in a presentation of an ordinance for adoption. So basically, we know when we have homes in the urban interface in the hazard zone that we have a significant increased risk to both the public and to the structures themselves. Relationship to council goals is ensuring the community safety and securing a strengthening environment. This is also along with our wildfire coordination plan that we're putting together for the city. Ties right into that as well. So we came to you on March 18th and spoke about it for the first time. We represented the boundaries, the growth boundaries that we're actually imposing this on. We also went through and talked about the mandatory statewide adoptions and how we have to do that through the council adoption through the ordinance to put that into our section of the residential specialty code. We definitely know that we have an issue with wildfire in our area. We had several last year. We're kind of going into another year of looking like we're going to have a drought conditions and a possibility for things to happen. We want to be able to make sure that we're actually doing all we can to reduce any kind of death, injury, or loss of property values. And we're hoping with this ordinance that we can do some of that. We talked about how the structures ignite and how this goes hand in hand with that. We talked about direct flame contact where the fire leans over, blows directly onto the home. Flying embers, which we feel is the actual most invasive way that the fire is going to get into the home. And then we actually have the radiant heat, which is just that fire burning next to the house that transfers the heat as well. Through the adoption of this, basically what we're looking for is just putting this into the building code so that we can make these homes more resilient against a wildfire. It's not just a devastating wildfire like we've seen recently in Alameda or in Happy Camp. This is any fire we're going to build resilience into because ember storms happen even in a small brush fire. They happen in small structure fires, so that we're kind of hardening against multiple fronts. Our adoption is only applying in the specific zones that we identified through the Oregon Department of Forestry as wildfire hazard zones. So the Oregon Department of Forestry has done a review, made sure that those zones actually contain flammable vegetation and that they are at risk. Basically, it's going to be their topography, the slope, and that they have volatile fuels in those areas. There's both a north and a south zone. This is the only zones that they would apply in. We talk about roof integrability. Wood shake shingle roofs, we don't really see those much anymore, but those are where a real huge hazard is. They're kindling on a roof. And basically, once an ember gets in there and gets seated, it's just going to continue to burn underneath and create a lot of issues. Asphalt and composition roofs, what we call Class A roofing, or Class B, are inherently flame resistant. They're tight fitting. They don't have a flame characteristic that will normally burn with small embers. And then of course we talk about like roof tiles or gaps or fills. This is a great point for the fire embers to get in, get seated, and where the firefighters can't even really get to them easily. Talk about compliant roofs. We have asphalt shingles, which is, like I say again, what we see mostly. Metal roofing, clay or tile, or other Class B assembly materials. Some of the other requirements are what we call bird stopping. Again, we talked about those open ends if we do something like a tile roof to make sure those are stopped. Rain gutters. This basically goes along, we have a lot of rain gutters that are out there that are available that block leaves and debris. In this case, we're actually asking for an increase just above that, so it's actually non-combustible as well. Because if the leaves and debris catch in the gutter, obviously we have an issue. But if they're sitting on top of a flammable piece of plastic, we have just about as an issue with the fire being seated in there. So that whatever we put across there would have a non-combustible surface. Attic roof vents and floor vents, basically having a screen mesh that's a fine screen that will not allow, again, those fire embers to penetrate in there. Exterior wall coverings, we talked about those, events where we have direct flame contact or we have radiated heat into the side of the building. We've seen definitely instances where that can ignite very easily. And so we're asking that we harden those walls a little bit, give them some additional fire resistive measures so that the fire can't penetrate. We talk about eaves and projections. Commonly, we would see that eaves are open. We're asking boxing in the eaves. What this does again is it doesn't allow the embers or place to trap and be able to penetrate into the roof. Also, in these where we have any kind of soffit venting, we would actually be increasing the screening mesh, again, so we don't want any penetration into there. When we have porches and overhangs, again, using a durable surface that's on the bottom side of this that is non-combustible or limited combustible, this will, again, give us protection against that direct flame contact, radiant heat, and those embers getting seated in there. And then when we have underfloor projections, again, that we actually have ignition-resistant material. It's the same thing, basically, as the fire is progressing. We don't want those flames to sweep up underneath there and get a purchase point, or the embers a place to collect. Our under roof protection. So again, basically, we don't see a lot of cantilever building construction, but again, if we did see that in some of our areas, we would ask that the whole underside of the home be protected as well. And we talk about compliant walking surfaces. As we're shifting more into composite decking, there's some decking out there that is pretty volatile. It's very high plastic content. The decking we would be approving would be of a more durable brand that does not want to carry fire. It will smolder, but doesn't want to openly burn. And we can kind of see a really good example there, the difference between the two. Glazing, meaning your windows and coverings. Basically, we're asking it to have a 20-minute fire resistance rating. When I spoke to the building official, Ken Sandlund, he basically told me with the energy efficiency code, this really isn't an issue because all the glazing is currently out there is going to meet this. If it's single pane and not double glazed, it still has to be tempered glass, which is the other recommendation in the code, that if we have single pane, that it be tempered, so it would meet the requirements. One of the questions that came about was doors when I last talked to you, and then how we would handle doors and openings in decorative front doors. And that was one of the Ken pointed out, it doesn't make a difference because they're required to be hardened glazing anyway, so we wouldn't see an increase in cost or anything there. It's basically part of a standard door package that has a vision panel in it. So when we talk about adopting this, we have a couple assumptions that we made. Again, we didn't look at any cost for roofing. This is new construction only. It doesn't apply to older construction. We even struck out the portion of the code that requires roofs to meet the new requirement if they're replaced. We felt that that was a little bit invasive for people that already invested in their home. Can be tens of thousands of dollars to have a complete re-roof, that we didn't feel that that was applicable. The window glazing, again, from building safety is telling us that there's not going to be any increased cost because all the glazing that currently meets code would be 20-minute resistant construction. We do have an increased cost in the gutter screening. And then again, we have our underfloor ventilation protection, which is the screening, or what we call a meshant screen that can actually block the embers. That's going to cost obviously a little bit more. And then basically the wall coverings. And through the code, there's a lot of different ways to accomplish an exterior wall. And making that fire resistance can be done in a myriad of ways, so we really had a hard time projecting that. And so basically when we sat down and talked to everybody, we estimated that it would be $5,000 to $10,000 for a 1,500 square foot home to add these provisions into it. We did this a little over a year ago, so I think the impact probably is going to be a little bit more now as we see our building costs increase, and they're going to ebb and flow as that process changes. Basically, we're calling to action today to take a look at this and adoption an ordinance. We recommend that we do adopt it, and this would go into effect. It would only be new construction. It would not, if a lot already has a building permit, it would not be included. If a lot has already applied for a subdivision, that would not be required as well, as long as it's done in 1 year. So it's strictly only new construction. When we ran the two areas, in the north area, I think we had 174 buildable lots, and in the south area, we had a little over 200 buildable lots. So basically, these are out of over 5,000. So it's a small percentage, but we're taking a step in the right direction, and as homes obviously get replaced, new subdivisions, or we continue to expand our city limits out into the urban growth boundary, we'll keep adopting these into there so the new construction is more hardened. So we offer you today for the adoption of the ordinance, modify the proposed ordinance, or no further consideration proposed.
Thank you, Joe. Does anyone have questions?
Yes.
Rob and then Rick?
Joe, could you repeat what you said about standards being relaxed for people that are re-roofing existing homes?
Well, it's not really lax. It's basically stating that you can re-roof with the existing roofing you have on your home, if in an existing home. So we really don't even see a shake shingle. I haven't seen one in the city. There's maybe 1 or 2 houses that would apply to that. But basically, if they didn't have a Class B shingle, they had something else, they'd be able to replace it with the same type of roofing. Again, changing out a roof style can be quite expensive, and that would only be, again, for existing construction where they do that.
So the new code then would allow people to re-roof with a wood shake?
I don't know if that's even permissible per the code anymore, but it would be a building code. If it was an existing roof and it's being replaced with the same, it probably would, yes.
Yeah, that's problematic for me, but anyone else have a comment about that from Aaron or anyone on that side of the room?
Ultimately, it's something council can consider changing in the ordinance that's in front of you, and to require, if a re-roof is to occur, some of those things to not be allowed.
I guess, the reason that kind of is a sensitive subject for me is that they didn't have a wood roof, but some in the room, they might remember, probably might go back almost 20 years now, but a home 2 doors down from me went up, and it went up real big, and it was, embers were just flying in everybody's yard, and me and my neighbors were out there, soaking everything down. That was 2 doors down, but I mean, a shake roof could potentially be sending embers for many blocks away, and as you mentioned, it's like probably one of the single biggest hazards. So to let that continue, or that possibility continue, is really counter to, I think, everything else we're trying to do with this new code.
Included in your packet, I think it was about page 17, was the ordinance that was redlined for you. And basically those first few paragraphs cover existing structures and re-roofing. If you so desire, that can be, re-put back into this proposal as well. Again, we're trying to make this, we're balancing the economic impact that we're having on our community and safety, and trying to really weigh that and keep mindful of our citizens.
Rick?
Thank you, Joe. A couple questions. The windows, you said they'd be double pane, and normally the windows will meet the fire standards. Does that still allow vinyl, or you have to go to an aluminum frame?
I believe it's still vinyl, according to what the building official told me. So that's,
Okay.
it would still meet that, because you're not really talking about the ignition of the casing itself. You're talking about the radiant heat coming through the window
Right.
and igniting the objects that are inside.
Okay. And then last question, now they're coming out with new solar tiles. While it doesn't specifically prohibit that, and I'm sure the solar tile would meet the fire resistant, should it be actually listed as a permitted thing in here, or it's automatic?
It would be allowed under the current code, and I'm not familiar enough with solar paneling to know how they react in fire. They are rated because they're on top of a rated roof. I just don't know what that resistance rating is underneath the codes.
Okay, thank you.
Valerie?
Yes, thank you, Joe. I do know that this is something that came down from the state that needs to be adopted locally, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me of other areas in the state that adopted these standards?
The city of Medford has adopted the ordinance.
Okay.
It's under consideration in a couple other places. Bend is the next place that's looking at an adoption, but they have not as yet.
Okay. And do they have, I mean, I'm just going to assume from looking at the videos that they have shown and proven that these do indeed stop, I mean, make it much more resilient than would normally happen? Because, I mean, I question when the heat of a fire goes through, if anything's going to really stop some of those fires that, like the Alameda one.
Last time I had the opportunity to show you a video, the NIST video, and it's proven construction standards. They basically blew an absolute firestorm at a house, one treated, one untreated, and the difference was, it was outstanding to look at the survivability of a home. Nothing's 100%.
Right.
If we had an Alameda fire come through, I don't know what exactly the percentage would be. We do know that looking at the Camp Fire, that was a great example done in California. They actually had homes that were treated and built underneath the new standard and those that weren't. The homes that were built in the new standard had a 75% higher survivability rate than those that didn't.
Okay, that's kind of what I was looking for, to see if
Yeah.
there was anything proven, and that makes sense.
California's had this in their adoption, in their codes, mandatory for, I think, 5 years now.
Okay, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So you said ODF has evaluated the city and identified those two zones, the north zone and the south zone. Have they done an evaluation around the entire perimeter of the city? Is that something that's been completed?
Yeah, so ODF does a total assessment of the state of Oregon and shows you wildfire hazards. And within those, we looked at where those areas were within the city of Grants Pass. We created those specific zones in the city. The requirement is that ODF has to, number one, say that's a hazard zone, which in those zones they have. And then the city we created those as an urban interface issue, started out with our fireworks, and we've expanded that into using that as identifying, obviously, where our hazard areas are, and including that as to where we would use this ordinance.
So just to make sure I understand that, the city identified these and then gave that to ODF?
No, ODF does an overlay of the entire state. The only time that we can create these zones is if ODF has already said that it's a wildfire hazard area, and then we simply take that area that's within the city that we think is at risk and build our zones on top of that. So all these were already identified and have been identified through Oregon Department of Forestry for several years as wildfire risk areas, as high
Okay.
hazard, I should say.
In your opinion, are there other zones that are not identified in these two zones that would be at risk?
Currently, we're looking really well. There's one very small isolated section that is not included, and that would be kind of on the Harbeck area. Hilltop, there's a small little isolated zone that isn't in this area. There are current existing structures there, but again, looking at the properties, there's not anticipated really any development there either. Now, when we look at our urban growth boundaries, and as the city expands, yes, there's going to be increase in area we will need to take into consideration.
Okay, thank you. And then I would also second Rob's comments about the roof replacement.
Thank you. Kurt?
I'll jump on the bandwagon. I agree with Rob on that. It seems like a pretty obvious open score there that we don't upgrade the roof. And so I would assume that you said that this doesn't apply to any existing homes. So there really is no incentive for somebody to upgrade or retrofit their house, even at the time the purchase, or they sell the property, there's not going to be a requirement to meet the code?
So this would be if an existing home that could have been there for however many years, if they were going to re-roof, you would have to get a permit for that, and they would make them come up to this new standard, meeting an ignition-resistant roof. And if you look on page 9 of your packet, it has the adoption. It actually has the Oregon Residential Specialty Code for 1 and 2 family dwellings and the adoption ordinance for wildfire hazard mitigation. Basically, we would just be including the entire text of this, and that would actually go through and talk about re-roofing, that the material would have to be in accordance with the standard. And it actually is a little bit less because it's equivalent to a Class C standard as opposed to a Class B, which is what our current standard is. So it's a little bit lower than that. But again,
If they're selling their property, there's no requirement to bring it up to code?
no.
Thanks.
Other questions? All right, council
Thank you.
discussion. Thank you. Do you have proposals that you want to make changes to the ordinance? Are you ready to make a motion? Do you have discussion? Where are you at? Oh, public comment. Is there anyone here to speak on this? All right.
I'm actually not here for that reason, but I did have a question as he was
Just
presenting.
tell us your name, please.
Pat Leeknecht. I was just curious, Joe, in regards to the cost, you quoted a 1,500 square foot home, additional 10 to 15, maybe $20,000 now, based on the price increase. As we all know, there's an issue with affordable housing. And I was just curious in regards to the cost increase, do you know of any grants that are available similar to, like an energy grant that would help offset the cost of the increase in construction?
When you look at things like windows, yes, there are energy grants available for that. There's even grants available for re-roofing if we're addressing issues with insulation in the attic space that would be applicable. It's not specifically to meet the standard, but there are things that are out there. There's also some grants that are available for fuel reduction and mitigation around your home, but nothing directly related to the construction that I'm aware of.
Okay. So just wanted to put that out there, that maybe there's some ways to offset the increased cost because, again, $10,000 to $15,000 or more for a family looking for an entry-level home is a considerable amount. So,
Thank you. All right, Rick and then Brian.
As I said before, I used to handle insurance, and one thing I see happening, and I think it's even a problem in Paradise right now, if you go for insurance, it's extremely difficult to get it because the insurance companies don't want the liability. So I could see the insurance companies either giving a hefty discount for your policy on fire insurance if you have a home that meets these standards, but I also feel that the insurance company may also deny you, and you may have a hard time finding insurance if you don't meet the fire standards. And the last comment, I had a shake roof for 30 years, and I went to replace and loved it and was looking at replacing it. And the price of heavy-duty cedar shingles, as most wood products, is just out of sight. And asphalt actually ends up being less costly and more effective. So while I agree, I don't think we want that in our ordinance. Realistically, most people may not choose shakes anymore, even if they have that ability. Thank you.
Brian?
I would move to adopt the ordinance amending municipal code chapter 9.04.010, adoption of city building code in short title with the amendment to not strike R 327.3.1.2 re-roofing or repair of roofing of existing buildings, and have it read by title only, first reading.
We got a second from Rob there. I have to see what number was it that you just read again?
It's on page 9, the next to last paragraph. 327.3.1.2.
3.1.2. Okay. Discussion on this? Rick?
So I have a question on that. I just need clarification. So roofing shall be asphalt shingles, but does it allow other forms? It says metal in accordance. Okay, could you clarify that again?
Well, I think it's just as Joe explained, when they re-roof, they can't use a material that is below a Class C. I think essentially that's what it says.
I guess I think I'm a little bit hesitant if the actual correct words are in here. I think the intent, I'm for your intent. So whatever modification needs to be made, but I'm not sure referencing this does it.
Joe, do you have a comment on this?
So if I may.
Yep.
So as we're looking at the actual the document on page 9, the 327.3.1.2 .3.1.1 talks about re-roofing, and it says that it shall be shake shingle in accordance with section, or metal roofing in accordance with the title section, shingles in accordance with the section. So basically what it's stating is all those are applicable by adopting that section, that the only difference in the current code would be that you could actually have a Class C asphalt shingle. The new code would require at least a Class B asphalt shingle. So it's a little lower standard. All the other options are still open to them.
Is that the right section, Brian, or was it 3.1.2?
I may need to re-amend. I'm not 100% clear if both of those should be unstricken.
They kind of go hand in hand together.
Okay, then I would probably need to amend that to unstrike both of those sections.
So you would like to amend to include both 327.311 and 327.312?
Correct.
And again, by adopting that, it's more than 50% of the structure being re-roofed would have to be done. So anything less than 50% would be allowed to replace the existing. And we'd have to create new code language if we wanted to not do that. I would recommend that we're adopting that. We're making a huge impact currently.
And Rob, do you second he does. Okay, so the motion on the table right now is to adopt the ordinance as presented, except on page 9, we have two sections called roofing and re-roofing or repair of roofing of existing buildings, that those two sections would not be stricken and they would remain in the code. Is there discussion? Vanessa?
I just want to say thank you, Joe, for bringing this forward to the council. I think this falls perfectly under the council, one of the council's top priorities of enhancing community safety, so thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, I know that people on the council probably heard me say this before, but someone tonight brought up a cost issue, and I kind of look at this as an analogy of, today people wouldn't be able to go to a car dealership and buy a car without seat belts or without a shatter-resistant windshield or without anti-lock brakes. So it's just the kind of thing that has, through experience, we've kind of evolved to the point where we know what safety is and what isn't safe. And in the same way that we wouldn't want any of our kids or grandkids driving a car without seat belts, 20 or 30 years from now, we might not want any of our kids or grandkids in a home without some of these fire-resistant features. So I think that in this case, the cost is probably not a top priority. I think safety is a top priority here. And it's not just for the people in that home, but it's the people in the surrounding homes as well.
Is there further discussion? Valerie?
I'm just not a quick read when it comes to codes. So like I said, and I do know, one of the things, I've struggled with this because of the affordable housing. And I realize and recognize that one of the biggest crises we have in our country is affordable housing. And I know that affordable housing has become a problem, and a lot of it has to do with regulations. Because every time you add a regulation, the price of it goes up, and it makes it that much more difficult for somebody to do it. What has made me believe in this one, in the wildfire zones, is because I do feel that insurance should compensate for somebody down the road, and that their insurance rates will go down as a result of having done that. And it is safe, and I do understand that. So I'm willing to go along with the whole idea of the wildfire hazard mitigation, but I'm not quite sure exactly what keeping 3.11, 3.12. So I really do want clarification of exactly what we're doing, because like I said, I don't fly with codes by the seat of my pants very well. So what you're basically saying then, if I'm understanding this, is that if somebody goes to re-roof, or anybody who goes to re-roof their house will have to go by the new roofing code? Is that what we're saying?
Only in the wildfire hazard zone.
That's what I'm unsure about. It will only be in the wild.
Only in those identified zones.
Okay.
Only if you're replacing 50%. Yeah,
Can you use the
Okay.
mic, Joe?
Yeah,
I apologize for that.
okay,
So it only apply to homes in the wildfire hazard zone,
okay.
and additionally, only if they're being 50% or more of the roof being replaced.
Okay, so thank you. That helps, because like I said, I was unclear, and this is not my forte. So thank you for that clarification.
Rick?
One thing, we talk about affordable housing, but there's two sides to it too. You take 10 homes and you build them to the lesser standard in the wildfire area. A fire comes through, takes out 10 homes. How expensive is it going to be for those 10 people, those 10 families, to build new homes at the new prices? And then what are those people going to do during when those homes are gone? Or where are they going to live? And who's going to pick up that price tag of supporting them? So I think there's, two sides of the coin, and this actually, if you have a home and it survives the fire, then it's quite a savings and it makes it actually more affordable. Thank you.
Further discussion? Brian?
Yeah, I just want to make one more quick comment to Joe. I don't know when when ODF did this evaluation, but in looking at the map, I mean, in my very non-expert opinion, it looks like there's other areas that would be at risk. So I don't know if there's any way to get maybe an updated evaluation from ODF or a more detailed, because if they're doing the whole state, I don't know how detailed they get. So that might be something to look into in the future here.
Make sure it's on. So those evaluations are done pretty regularly. We agree with you, but we also take into consideration what the impact is to the overall population and those densities, and then we reevaluate as well. There will be time here in the next couple of years as we continue forward with this work that we're talking about doing with wildfire mitigation and building resiliency into our community, that we're going to need to adjust those boundaries and expand those. Right now, we're taking the most extreme, most hazardous. As time goes on, we'll start to expand that out, but we also need to we feel also it's important to take into consideration the overall impact of the community as you start to make those changes as well.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want us to be behind on this.
Sure.
So the sooner the better as far as the classifications go, and then, council can decide, at what time we do what, but I appreciate your guys' work. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll roll this into those other options that we were talking about last week when I presented about the fire resiliency and the adaptive community. This is another one of those strategies we can apply, and we'll give the council and ourselves the ability to expand those as we need to. One last comment regarding insurance, because that's come up a few times. Most insurance writers at this point in these wildfire hazard areas will typically send in an evaluator to evaluate a new property, or if they're going to do a new insured. And part of the difficulty with becoming insured is whether you actually meet these requirements or not. So it's not about necessarily getting a break right now with the insurance industry as much as being eligible to get insured to begin with, so that work needs to be done. So that's kind of where the industry is leaning at the moment. It'll probably be a while yet before you'll see any kinds of incentives coming back the other direction, just because of the severity and the amount of loss the industry is losing currently on the West Coast.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the table. Is there further discussion? Ready to vote? All right, so the motion is to adopt the code, but not striking 327.3.1.11, and then 327.312. Brian, you're first.
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
No.
Valerie?
Yes,
And Rick?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-1, but we will not have a second reading tonight. Next up,
Sarah.
oh,
Don't we
read
need to do
it,
the
thank
first?
you.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass amending Municipal Code Chapter 9.04.010 of the City Building Code and short title.
Thank you. Next up is consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the replacement water treatment plant site cleanup And it looks like our Public Works Director is presenting.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I have a fairly brief presentation. I want to provide a little bit of background and project summary for the J Street property cleanup package, which was bid a while back. And this is for project WA6207, which is your water treatment plant replacement project. And the relationship to your council goals is to maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure to meet the community's needs, build a replacement water treatment plant, which is a 3-star item in your work plan. I know you recognize this slide. It was before you a few months ago when Mr. Talley of Stantec was down and kind of reviewing where we were at with this project. And I wanted to put it back up again just to kind of remind us of where we started this journey back in 2011. And here we are in 2021, 10 years later, and you are in a position where you're ready to start working on this project, which is really exciting. It's taken a lot of work. You've had to make a lot of really hard decisions, but you're there. So in January 4th, staff presented a detailed history of the need and steps taken by the council to decide on the reasons for replacing the 90-year-old water treatment plant. We followed that up on the 19th of January with Mr. Talley from Stantec and staff providing additional information to the council, including the potential for alternative technologies that may offer construction cost savings for this project. In February of the same year, City Council passed Resolution 217015, which agreed to a purchase price for the J Street property with the owners for a reduced footprint of land. Subsequently, on March 1st, we took ownership of the property, the J Street, allowing work to commence essentially on the replacement water treatment plant project. On March 3rd, staff gave a timeline to the council for advancing the project, beginning with the clearing and the preparation of the J Street property for construction. At that time, we also presented a timeline for the entire project, including advertising a request for proposals, confidential interviews with prospective design bidders, and then when we might have the final design builder in front of you. So the J Street property cleanup was designed to, and the exact words from the RFP were, develop approximately 7.7 acres of industrial property. The proposed project will consist of site clearing and grubbing, erosion, sediment control, removal of existing structures, stockpiles, site earthwork, etc. The intent of that project was to ensure that all of the environmental issues were detected and mitigated, that stormwater runoff from the site was controlled, and that the site was secured in construction-ready condition prior to a design-build firm being hired. In the packet that I left on your table, I did put in a couple of screenshots. You can see the modified footprint and the work that needed to be done. There is quite a bit of detailed work. We are building a pond on that site to not only handle stormwater, but to handle 1 hour of plant flow at max capacity, which is 45 MGD. We are not building 45 MGD capacity, but that is that future capacity. We are sizing the pond today for that future capacity to be able to handle that overflow. And this was the timeline that we presented for you back in March. And as you can see, we are right on schedule. The bids did go out, and today we are here before you on Cinco de Mayo to ask for your approval for this project. The project was advertised on the 8th and the 9th, and on the 15th and the 16th in both the Grants Pass Daily Courier and the Daily Journal of Commerce. We did hold a mandatory pre-bid meeting on March 19th. That means that the bidders had to come to that meeting so that they were able to sign in, see the site conditions for themselves. And then on April 9th, the proposals were received from 5 qualified firms. We were very pleased about that. Engineer's estimate for the project was just over $870,000. We were very pleased to see the range of bids, which was $544,645 to $768,422. That's a great price on the project. Slyden Constructors, Inc. was the apparent low bidder. So as of today, the contractor is ready to begin work. In fact, they've already turned in their first round of submittals on some of the long lead time items such as the manholes and the pipes. And they are ready to commence before the end of the month. The project does have a completion date slated at September 1st, but it is anticipated that it will be completed prior to that time. Funds for the project are available within Project WA 6207, Water Treatment Plant Replacement. The project does have a current balance of $8.56 million. We are also anticipating the addition of $3.1 million in water revenues and SDC funds in the proposed budget for FY22. There will also be staff resources required both to monitor the project, including some time from Stantec, not just to monitor, but to ensure that everything is installed correctly. And then also those facilities, especially the stormwater facilities, are going to require ongoing maintenance forever. So the call to action we do have slated for today. The notice of intent to award was issued to the successful contractor and no bid protests have been received in the required time period. The alternatives are there before you, and with that I would answer any questions that you would have.
Thanks, Jason. Do we have questions? DJ?
Yeah, a couple questions about the bids. There's a substantial difference between City of Grants Pass engineer and others.
Yeah.
Brief explanation is fine, just using example item 9 and item 13. For the stormwater basin, 106 engineer, everybody else was between 20 and 40,000. See item 13. Lawn seeding, city engineer was at 6,000. Everybody else is between 50,000 and 117,000. And those are just two notable differences there.
Yeah. So I would have to get back to you with an answer on that particular item. I can tell you why we believe the costs were much lower than what was in the engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate was based on a large amount of spoils that were left on the site previously. Mr. Osland did a tremendous job of cleaning up the site on his way out, and so we believe that that resulted in lower proposal costs, or one of the reasons. On the grass seeding, I would have to get back to you why the engineer's estimate was so much lower than what people proposed.
Sure. I just, I just have questions and concerns when I see those substantial differences. Another question, I think you answered it, but explicitly, these improvements, this storm drain manhole, those kind of things, those are permanent? Is that
Those
right?
are permanent. They will not be removed or relocated as part of the treatment plant process. That northern corner section, which is really oddly shaped and it's encroached by the railroad and the Avista gas line, that's where we're going to put that structure. It'll stay there forever.
Okay, let's see, the fencing, that chain link fencing, that's permanent as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see, one other question, slash comment was, there was a lot of desire and talk about having particular interest in local contractors to perform some or all of this work. I noticed that the recommended contractors out of Salem, whereas using CPA Acquisitions, for example, local company out of Murphy, they're more or less in the ballpark of that Sladen construction question. So what was the motivation behind selecting Sladen, who's out of town contractor, as opposed to a local contractor that is reputable and within the similar ballpark estimate?
So this was a cost-based proposal, not a qualification-based proposal. We don't have a lot of leeway in there to select the next highest bidder when this contractor is highly qualified to perform the work.
So the nature of this is lowest bid gets it.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that is the one and only basis to recommending Sladen.
There was no other evaluation criteria for this project, which we will put in for requests for qualifications, such as for the design builder selection. Cost will be a factor in that proposal, but in this, cost is the only factor.
Understood. Thank you.
Rick?
Thank you, Jason. It's been a long journey getting here, and it's nice to see us at this point. Can you go back to the slide that shows the pond? Okay, so we take that and we go out to design build to put a product on there that will achieve the needs that we need in the new water treatment plant. Will that pond and the design of the pond and that location of the pond constrict the design builder in what his options are? In other words, would he have appreciated the opportunity to give input on that pond, and would he have chosen that pond, or if he had an opportunity to take it elsewhere, do that?
So that is an incredibly fair question, and it actually has come up from a couple of the prospective bidders. Most of the bidders have agreed with us, so it is hard to see, so let me turn on the pointer really fast. So the road comes in right here. There is a high-pressure Avista gas line that transects the property right here. And it has a very wide easement north and south of it that you cannot build on. So that really limits what you can do up in this north west corner. It really is the most obvious place to put the pond. I expect Sladen Construction is one of the firms that is vying to get the design build contract, to be quite honest. They have already expressed a desire to turn in a request to alter the pond design to be able to facilitate a more logical construction flow for them. Now, I'm qualifying this because we don't know that they're the design builder. We may not allow that RFI to move forward, but we told them they are well within their rights should they, should this be awarded, to submit that, and we would consider that as an option.
So will we have, I would say, that answer before the pond is constructed?
It is highly probable because of the timeline. The proposals for the design builders due on May 24th. We should have selection by mid-June is our kind of selection date. We will then be starting negotiations. So we would know right then if it turns out to be Sladen. I think that would lend more weight to considering an RFI to reshape the pond. If it's another contractor that gets that, I think that we would want to do so in consultation with the other contractor firm.
Any other questions? Thank you,
Thank you.
Jason. Is anyone from the public here to speak on this? All right, council discussion. DJ.
Yeah, for the benefit of discussion, I'd like to bring up that last topic that I asked for. There has been an expressed interest to promote locally for the cleanup effort, construction of the fence in the stormwater basins, and I'd like to see what council thinks. There's, as the only criteria to recommend Sladen, and then perhaps maybe some extrapolation that they might be designer builder applicant, considering CPI being a local contractor inside of the ballpark for the budget might be worthy of discussion.
Brian?
Yeah, I'll just follow up with what DJ said, and maybe just ask Mark or Jason if we even have the ability to do that, given the way that the RFP was structured or however that went.
So-
Yeah, we absolutely can. It's entirely up to us.
Clarify, are you talking about on this one that's in front of you today or a future one?
Just this one.
Yeah, this one today.
Yes, just this one, the cleanup fence building, storm basin remediation, just this one.
Yeah, so I would have to go back and research that. Generally speaking, your ability to, in essence, discriminate or favor contractors based on their status is very, very limited. And typically it's limited to contractors based in the state rather than more local, like from the county or even from the city. So to the extent you even can do it, it might be that you can limit it to contractors based in Oregon.
So my question for you would be, are we bound to only go with the lowest bidder here? Because in my opinion, that reputation is an ability to perform are certainly factors.
Yeah, so we did a competitive, I mean, it was a competitive sealed bid, so that is a lowest bidder type of selection. So yes, with this type of solicitation, it would be.
Any other comments? I think the staff is looking for a motion to authorize the contract, so are you interested in doing that today, or are there further questions? Valerie?
Actually, I'm interested in doing it today, just because I think that with our time slot, I would like to move forward with it. So I'm going to make a motion, and I move to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Sladen Constructors for the replacement water treatment plant site cleanup, project WA 6207.
Second from Brian. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Valerie, you're up.
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. We'll move forward with the J Street cleanup. Next up, we have consideration of a resolution awarding Steam Distillery LLC a system development charge matching grant. And it looks like Sue Searider is here to present.
Greetings, Mayor and Council. Nice to see everyone tonight. Let me get my PowerPoint up here. Why is this not coming up? Okay, I'm here to present a SDC grant, matching grant incentive request from Steam Distillery LLC. And the subject and summary is that this resolution would provide a SDC matching grant up to $25,000 for all SDC. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't put it in mode. Okay, so resolution would provide an SDC matching grant incentive for all SDC charges. And relationship to council goals is to encourage economic opportunities by facilitating an environment to encourage business prosperity and economic opportunities. And the intention of the matching grant is designed to help small businesses with 50 employees or less. It applies to existing and new businesses. And the conditions for the grant are a matching grant up to $25,000. And the funds are reimbursed when the business has met all the requirements for the building. And we do have a revenue source already in place. It's LB 6381. It's commercial and nonprofit infrastructure incentives. And currently, the balance is approximately $70,000 left in this project. And the current SDC charges for this particular building have not been calculated. They have a minor site plan review on the 21st of this month, and once they get their building permit, then we will know what the total charges are for the SDCs. So the call to action is at your council's discretion, and there's a potential motion there for you. And I do have the 3 owners of Steam Distillery here tonight. We have Terry, Mike, and Scott. If you have any questions for them directly, or if you have any questions for me.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Valerie?
I just want to know, when we give the grant for the SDCs, does that cover That covers just the SDCs, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this particular grant is only for SDCs.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
DJ?
Let's see, so owner-occupied business says yes, but we have a business owner and property owner are different.
Yeah, Jody Paquin owns Climate City, and she did ask if she should be here tonight, and she's working in conjunction with Steam Distillery. This is a business-owned, though. Steam Distillery is the business owner
Okay.
that's going into this space.
Just
And
for edification, is owner-occupied a requirement for SDC matching grant?
No, it's business. No,
Thanks.
we have given it to other businesses. Yes.
All right, just for the record, this came up the other day, but somebody wanted to know why this business was allowed to go into the downtown area when we have another business that's facing the adult use ordinance. So maybe if Terry or Scott want to come up and answer, or Mike.
So we've been working on this for about 2 years between federal licensing, state licensing, and watching where the city has been on their adult-based business ordinance. And in working with the OLCC, our license allows minors. There are no restrictions to minors at any time throughout the day of our operation. There is a type 2 licensing restriction, which would limit no minors to about 4, maybe 5 bar stools within the distillery restaurant tasting room. But it would be just like any other restaurant, like if you walked into Tap Rock or any other restaurant that has a minors allowed and a small section without, but no restrictions on hours or limitations to minor entrance into the building at any time we're open.
Thank you. So you're choosing to have this be a family-friendly establishment?
We made that decision based on current city code.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
I have absolutely no idea what the legal definition of a family-friendly business is. It sounds nice, but, so minors are prohibited from some parts of that, of your business, but it's not considered an adult business? I'm not sure if I understand that.
It's our understanding that under this current city code, that excluding minors at any part of the day that you're open, or excluding minors throughout your business, but as you would experience in nearly any restaurant in Grants Pass that has a liquor license and perhaps a bar. I mean, I could name all of them, but say Tap Rock or say Laughing Clam or any others. I mean, there are bar stools. For us, that's 4, maybe 5. And minors cannot sit at the bar stools.
Okay, I appreciate that you've investigated. You do have a bias because it's your business.
Certainly,
And I'm
that's
just
why
wondering
yeah.
what city staff feels, is this an adult? Because quite frankly, the name Steam Distillery certainly sounds adult to me. It doesn't sound like family anything. But I'm just wondering how the city staff has decided that this is not an adult business. Because it certainly sounds that way to me, especially the way you wrote it up with a tasting area, which means that basically things are going to be available over the counter to anybody who walks by. So that to me it sounds like an adult business to me, quite frankly.
Understood, and a 2-part answer. So as Susan mentioned, we are under a minor site plan review that will allow the city staff to make that decision. But as it relates to the state of Oregon and the OLCC licensing, which has set precedents in this, there are 7 different license types ranging from type 1 to type 7 that have different restrictions on minors. And our type 2 licensing does not restrict minors at any part of the day during our operations.
Mark?
So the definition of adult business in the code, and I'll paraphrase, but it reads in relevant part, any business which prohibits admission to all or a portion of the premises to any persons younger than 21 years of age. And as talked to Brad, this has not been approved as a non-adult use or otherwise. I'll let Brad expound on that. But that's the definition, all or a portion of the premises. And I am hearing that a portion of it, albeit a rather small portion, is restricted.
Any other questions? Discussion from council? Comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have something, Brad? Okay.
So we, as the counselor just stated, we haven't done a thorough review on this application yet. It was submitted to us just a few days ago in terms of the formal application. So in terms of making a determination of whether it is or is not, that is based on us looking at the actual application and the site plan. Based on what was given tonight by the applicant, the wording, it sounds like it is. If there's any portion, my understanding of the Type 2 OLCC permit is that it does restrict a portion of the business to minors. Type 1s, minors are restricted from 100% of the premise, so we're definitely not talking about that. But I guess I just wanted to be clear that what you have before you tonight is the grant, and what we have at Community Development, which was submitted a few days ago, which we haven't done a full analysis on, is the actual permit. So none of the grant money would be issued until the permit through Community Development is issued.
Vanessa?
Is this a rare situation where an SDC grant is filed before a minor or major site plan is approved?
Is it a rare situation?
Has it occurred? Is it something that occurs often, or in your experience, can you outline that? Does one normally come before the other?
Well, in talking to Susan, she's done this longer than I have. This is actually the norm, in terms of the city's history on these SDC grants where we receive them, in terms of the business owner being able to make a determination on whether they are or not be eligible for grant money prior to, actually getting the permit. We've seen it both ways, but this, I would say, is probably more common.
Thank you.
And we actually did allow an SDC grant for Vice Brewing, I believe, at the meeting a couple weeks ago. Brian?
Well, given with what Brad just said about how the grant won't be approved until the permit is approved, and given that we approved one for Vice when they didn't have their permit approved, I think at this point I'm just going to go ahead and move to approve the resolution awarding Steam Distillery LLC the SDC matching grant up to $25,000 to assist with SDC expenses. This approval will include an expiration date of 1 year from the date of adoption of this resolution and is contingent upon approval of the permit.
All right, is there a second? Yeah, we did not do public, but is there a second on the motion? Valerie? Okay. Is anyone else from the public here to speak on this issue? Okay. We had Brian with the motion, Valerie with the second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Rob?
Yeah, I think it's not I don't think it's a secret to anyone in this room that our downtown area has several, at a minimum, businesses that are in direct violation of the adult use ordinance. They're existing businesses, but they actually, some of them have been installed in the last 3 to 5 to 10 years. The Steam Distillery business sounds like something that would fit in really nicely downtown. Sounds like it'd be a good tourist draw. And however this shakes out, I hope that you guys do well. I know you'll do well. But I also would like to say that I'm going to vote yes for this SDC grant, but I don't want to in any way, shape, or form have it imply that I am supporting the proliferation of the selective both application and enforcement of our adult use ordinance that we've seen as basically the rule downtown until Sean Weiss wanted to do what many others have done. So I understand this is just the SDC portion of it, and I understand you have to have a site plan review, but I also don't want anyone to think that my yes vote tonight is in favor of continuing the selective enforcement of our adult use ordinances.
Other comment? DJ?
I'll keep it brief. I want your business downtown. I do. And I would like to see it thrive. And I'm just going to mirror simply my sentiments match Councilor Pell's exactly. So I'll be voting yes as well because I'd like to see you move forward.
All right, any other comment? We're ready to vote, and Brian, I think you led with the motion.
I'll say that I concur with Rob and I will vote yes.
Thank you. Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
I don't concur with Rob, and I'll say yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes for the SDC.
All right, SDC passes. Thank you. Next up, Mark.
Get back to Councilor Fazer with a little more thorough response on the local preference. So I did verify in state law and the Oregon Administrative Rules regarding public contracting. It's the preference is based on resident bidder versus non-resident bidder. Resident bidder is simply defined as cited in Oregon. So if we're dealing with Oregon bidders, there's no preference permitted. If it's a non-resident and out-of-state bidder, then you can add really a conceptual dollar amount to the non-resident bidder's submittal equal to the preference that they would receive as a resident bidder in their home state.
I greatly appreciate that clarification for my misunderstanding. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have another SDC.
That's right.
Consideration, and Susan is back
right.
with us. Thank you.
Yes, and this one is not a restaurant or adult use. This is a daycare center, a proposed daycare center. So the subject again is a resolution to approve all the SDC charges up to $25,000, and it's a matching grant. The relationship to your council goals is to encourage economic opportunities. This is the location of the proposed Stepping Stone preschool and childcare location. It's located on Dowell Road. And this is a two-phase project that involves partition of an existing property line into two new parcels in preparation for their phase two, which involves the development of approximately a 2,055 square foot daycare center facility. The daycare will be adjacent to the Dowell frontage, and the building will be a single-story, covered front entry, adjacent fence playground, and surrounding landscape improvements. And the small parking lot will be constructed to support the use of a shared driveway with the back residents. And again, this is the SDC for small businesses, which are crucial to the area's economic development. And this particular SDC grant was combined with 3 capital projects combined into one. It was changed to a matching grant instead of just an outright grant. And this incentive applies to new or existing businesses. And I've lowered the balance based on the last grant that was approved. So the approximate current balance right now in the LB project is approximately $60,000. We do have some current estimated charges for transportation and parks that come to $12,694. However, it covers all SDC charges, and so once the building permit is issued, it will give us the determination of all the SDC charges. We're estimating approximately $6,500 to $8,500 for the grant request. And the business is seeking a matching grant up to $25,000. And your call to action date is at your discretion, and there is a potential motion. And I do have the owners of the Stepping Stone Preschool. I have Pat and Tracy and their son Chris, and Chris can answer any questions for you if you have any questions.
All right.
Or if you have any questions for me.
Do we have any questions? Rob?
Yeah, Susan, has the staff been able to study how close to any adult businesses their proposed preschool is? How many feet away?
I don't believe
Because I know
so.
there's several bars in that area.
Yes, but that, no,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mentioned on Monday that I requested that staff be prepared to answer that question. Not that you have to be prepared, but I did mention it Monday to give you a heads up.
Sure. So I wasn't aware that we were going to try and count the number, but we do have an answer for you with regards to that. The adult use ordinance is a one-way street. It's not a two-way street. It strictly states that adult use businesses have to maintain a 1,000-foot buffer from the following youth type of activities. It does not provide for any restrictions for a youth facility to go close to an adult use business, nor would it render them non-compliant. So it's a one-way street on applicability of the adult use ordinance only to adult use businesses, not to childcare or youth activities.
That's really interesting because in one of our packets a few weeks back, it said the exact opposite. And it was a packet that was printed by the city, given to the counselors. And I can come up with that. I think it was page 57. I don't remember which packet it was, but it did state the exact opposite to what you just said. So I'm confused, actually.
All right, let's take that up at another time. Are there questions about the daycare? Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this? All right, council discussion. DJ?
Yeah, I'd like investigation on that issue that just arose, because let's use the prior SDC application to the distillery. They could easily adjust their business plan and be in compliance, whereas if this is a two-way street, there is zero possibility that this can go within that 1,000-foot proximity of the bar. So I don't know if we have a few minutes to make that clarification, but this is something I'm going to need to move forward.
Yeah, we can make a clarification right now by reading the code if you'd like.
Is it relevant to the
The
system
code,
development
the
charge
code
discussion?
does not have any siting restrictions for youth facilities, schools, parks, et cetera. The locations that trigger buffer requirements for a new adult use. So as Aaron said, it's one-way street. So you evaluate the proximity issue with an adult use vis-a-vis those, schools, parks, libraries, whatever, within a certain radius of the proposed adult use. If one is outside of those buffers, an adult use is outside of those buffers, and one of those triggering types of facilities later moves in, that's not an issue for the adult use, because at that point it would be like a pre-existing non-conforming use, which is allowed by law. So I'm not concerned about daycare, school, et cetera, moving into an area that's within the buffer zone of an adult use.
Vanessa?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark, for your comment. To elaborate on what you had said, Councillor Pell, page 66 of our April 7th packet states the buffer also has a reverse effect in that new daycares, recreation facilities, and other sensitive land uses are prohibited from opening within the buffers as long as the adult businesses are in operation.
Which, if I do say so myself, strikes at the spirit of the ordinance in the first place, because we need to protect our children from adult use allegedly, and therefore putting childcare or other sensitive applications next to adult use doesn't exactly seem appropriate.
Rob?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Vanessa. It really is very disturbing to me that we had very clear language in the April 9th packet, and then we get a completely different response tonight, which again strikes to the fact that the adult use ordinance as it's currently written and or understood and or applied has likely been extremely inconsistently applied, and I don't even know if the city staff understands it because they've told us two completely different things, one in writing, one verbally here tonight.
All right, is there any further discussion on the SDC grant application in front of us? Valerie?
Though I agree with what Rob is saying, and I do understand that this brings up, once again, the adult use issue, which is the monster in the room or whatever it is, and I do get it. I hate to think that a daycare facility is going to stand in our way and not be able to receive an SDC grant as a result of an issue that has absolutely nothing to do with what they came for. And I do think a daycare is very necessary because I can tell you there is a crisis with childcare in our community. So I would vote to make a motion to approve the resolution awarding Stepping Stones Preschool and Child Care the SDC matching grant up to $25,000 to assist with their SDC expenses. And that approval will include an expiration date of 1 year from the date of adoption of this resolution. But I agree with Rob, a point has been brought up, but I don't think it affects them. So that is my motion.
Is there a second? Is that Brian with the second? All right, Vanessa, do you have a comment?
I do, thank you. I think although this isn't necessarily in relation to the SDC grant, you absolutely are right, Councillor Lovelace, that we do have a childcare issue in not only in our community, but throughout the country. It's really unthanked work, so thanks to this facility for taking on that. But I think that this exposes an inequity in the enforcement of our adult use ordinance. So I think that's a really important takeaway this evening, and also the flaws of the outdated ordinance that I think need to be revisited. Thank you.
Can you please tell me again the page number in that packet? I would like to read that myself.
No problem. It's page 66 from our April 7th meeting of this year, and it'll be towards the end of the second paragraph.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there further discussion on the motion? Rob?
Yeah, I agree with Valerie as far as the need and the fact that there really, a daycare would be the polar opposite of an adult business, at least in my mind, and really shouldn't really have any undue hurdles here to get their SDC grant. However, and I'm going to vote yes, but again, I don't want anyone to think that I am in favor of proliferating the selective enforcement and application of our adult use ordinance, and it almost seems like we're going to be going down that path again. So again, it really speaks to the fact that our adult use ordinance really has a lot of problems and needs to be updated, clarified, in some way, made equitable for all involved.
Joel?
I'm going to vote for the grant as well. There's 3 different types of effects. There's a direct effect, indirect effect, and a cumulative effect. And we're not talking about adult business with liquor. That is the concern. It's the cumulative effect that added to other things that are going on in our community as well, with what could come in with other businesses that would be very demeaning. And that's a discussion for a later date. But it's not about these businesses and the direct effects and the economic benefits that are associated with that. It's about the cumulative effect of everything that's going on and our social fabric of our community.
Thank you. Further comment? Rick?
I like the comments that Joel King made. I'm also in favor of granting this, but also I can see in the near future we need to address the confusion over the adult ordinance. And I want to promote business, but also I want to protect our community and preserve it. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, Valerie, you made the motion.
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
DJ.
Yes.
Motion passes. We got an SDC grant for Stepping Stones Preschool. Good luck with that. We do need childcare. I do not. Have big kids now, thank goodness, but I have been there. Next up, Valerie, hold your tongue. Our next up is another SDC grant for Three Peaks Holdings.
Actually, it's Three Peaks Holding LLC Business Retention and Relocation Assistance Grant request in addition to an SDC matching grant. So this particular company is requesting both of the grants that we have available right now.
We have those listed as two separate items, E and F.
Okay, I have one presentation for both of them.
That'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. This is a rendition of what the proposed new project will look like. And the subject and summary is that this would authorize a business retention and relocation assistance matching grant up to $50,000 for 228 Southeast K Street in accordance with the Business Retention and Relocation Assistance Grant Program. And then the applicant is also requesting the SDC matching grant up to $25,000. Three Peaks Holding Company is Tyler Cope, who's here tonight with his parents, and he is the son of Phil and Kim Cope, and they are the owner-operators of Road Cleaner and Laundromat. And the relationship to your council goals is to encourage economic opportunities by facilitating an environment to encourage business prosperity. So this is the location of the future development. It's located on, it's a parking lot right now, located between 7th and 8th Street on K Street, and it's adjacent right next to People's Bank. So the City Council has adopted a program to support the retention and expansion of small businesses within the jurisdiction. And in addition to assisting existing companies with infrastructure upgrades, the BRAG program is also intended to assist with system development charges and reimbursement district charges that are related to new upgrades and/or relocation. And then the SDC matching grant is specifically for SDCs. So the site is currently developed as an underutilized auxiliary parking lot with no existing structures. It's exciting because the current grant request is to allow for a mixed-use development right in downtown. The lower floor will be their existing dry cleaner and laundromat, and then the second floor will include 4 one-bedroom rental apartments. Now, Road Cleaner and Laundromat has been in business since 1963, and in addition to expanding their current footprint, they're also giving us an opportunity for affordable housing options. The estimated cost of the new development is a little over $1 million. So the cost implications for the Business Retention and Relocation Expansion Grant, it was budgeted at $400,000. Currently, there's approximately $135,000 left in that particular project, and the funding source is urban renewal dollars, and this location is in the urban renewal. And the SDC incentive matching grant is currently has a balance of about $50,000 after the last two ones that you just granted. So call to action date is, of course, at your discretion. And there is potential motion for both of those grants. And as I mentioned before, we have Tyler Cope, who is the son of Phil and Kim Cope, who are the owners of Rogue Cleaners. And this is a great succession plan because the son is coming in and he's building a new location for his parents to run their business. And they're also going to be providing some small rental units upstairs. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you have any questions for the
Thank you. Are there any
Applicants.
questions? Rick?
Thank you, Susan. I think this proposal is a really good idea, and I really appreciate the fact we could see more housing. But just for information for me, is this within the CBD district? Do they have to, you mentioned they're using some of their parking lot for this addition, but I didn't know if they had to provide parking for the business and for the housing.
I'll let the business answer that. I think there's still going to be room for parking on that space.
So, thank you. My name is Tyler Cope, owner of Three Peaks. So to answer your question regarding parking, currently it's a parking lot, but the new construction of that building, based on requirements from the city, from the structural sides of that, plus from the lower unit.
Can you make sure to speak into the mic?
Sure. Sorry. The parking requirements from the city are taken into account from a planning standpoint. So what we submitted for the site review, there is going to be parking in front of the business, and that is accommodating the entire square footage of both the lower and the upper units.
Vanessa?
On the background page, it outlines that there will be 4 separate apartments, but on the map and in the bio, it's saying that there's going to be 3 rental apartments. Can you clarify if it's 3 or 4?
I don't know where the 3 is coming from.
Tyler, when you originally submitted your application,
There's been a number of iterations, so the most current one and the one that was submitted with the site review is 4 single 1-bedroom apartment units. So will be 4.
Thank you.
Kurt?
Do you have a projected rent for those that you're going to be charging?
Yeah, right now we're looking at about $8 to $8.50 per unit. So brand new, 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 610, 620-ish square feet per unit.
So on page 50, it mentions a 2-bedroom. That's not going to happen?
No, like I said, we went through a number of iterations. The one that we landed on based off of parking taken into consideration, we had to make some adjustments due to the square footage of the building. There's also...
And so the existing laundromat is 3,000 square feet, is that right?
Existing one, I'll let you answer guys. Yeah.
And the new one's going to be?
So the lower floor is going to be about 3,900 square foot, and then we've got about 24-ish on top for the one.
How many more machines will that mean for you?
So it's going to do a few things for us. Obviously, we're moving into a larger space. We're going to have the ability to build out to make it more efficient. We're going to be adding capacity with larger machines compared to what we have right now.
Okay.
We're still in the process of determining what the right equipment mix is going to be, but obviously bigger space is going to allow us to increase that.
All right, I'm going to just throw this out toward the council, because obviously I'm new here, right? And it talks about the BRAG program, and it talks about that the program is intended to assist existing companies wanting to expand or that are facing unforeseen infrastructure upgrades, utility upgrades, or installation. And when I see the word upgrade, that makes me think that they would be moving into an existing location, but this is a new build. Mm-hmm. Is that right? And yes. Would that still be used for new construction?
the grant says relocation as well as expansion. So it has been used in the past for other businesses that relocated.
What are you going to do with the existing location?
So right now they've been in a long-term lease with the owner. That would be at her discretion.
Are you selling the business there with the...
No, so currently Road Cleaners owns all of the equipment. That equipment will be removed out of there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions, DJ?
Yeah, concerning the Bragg grant, this is for Aaron. There was a recent administrative denial of a Bragg grant for failure to list appropriate items that would apply to the Bragg grant. There's no list on this application about specific items that are going to be pertinent to the Bragg grant. And in all fairness and consistency, why did this come to our table without a comprehensive list of applicable uses to the Bragg grant, where we had an administrative denial for the same reason a matter of weeks ago?
Can I make a comment? The other one that you're referring to was moving into an existing building. This is a brand-new build.
So for brand new builds, we don't need a list?
Well, we know that there's going to be infrastructure and charges that are going to be put into the building, and they're not going to get reimbursed until those charges are.
So because it's new, the things that are listed in the Bragg grant are, and maybe they should have been put in on the application, are things like sewer lateral, water lateral, fire suppression. If those things are put into the building or needed for the building, then that is an allowable expense. The one that was denied for listing things was a remodel, but they were asking for a freezer, for a bathroom, for the things that were not in compliance with what are the listed categories of what is an allowable expense. Yes, it is new construction, but I think it should have been listed anyhow in the application, even though it is going to be needed and it will comply with that, but yes.
Sure, but using the other one as an example, we've since found that there are applicable uses to the Bragg grant that may or may not have been listed anyway. What I'm asking for is consistency here, in that there was an administrative denial for failure to have a list, and there is no list on this application.
And I agree, that is correct. It needs to be consistent.
All right, any other questions? Joel?
In terms of consistency, what we're talking about is what the money will be used for, is that correct? And the utilities and the, what exactly needs to be added to the application for it to remedy? It seems like a pretty minor inconsistency, though it did require the denial of the previous permit.
Pull up the Bragg grant unless, Susan, you can explain the list that is allowed to be in a Bragg grant.
Well, it's for all utility upgrades, any water or sewer laterals, anything with infrastructure. When you're putting new infrastructure, and this is going to have new infrastructure because there's nothing on the property right now.
Agreed, yeah.
And we have approved other Bragg grants without that list. Usually they are new builds. And that's where the Bragg relocation comes in, because they're usually building a whole new building or expanding the building, and that's what's going on with this particular one.
So from what I hear you saying, you don't see an inconsistency because it's a new building and it requires the infrastructure that the grant is designed to help fund. If I was to paraphrase DJ, and I don't quite understand it because I don't remember the previous application, it was a remodel where we weren't sure how the money was going to be used, whether it was for the remodel or the infrastructure. Is that correct, DJ?
Yeah, it was a remodel, and therefore it was presumed that Bragg grant wouldn't apply. It's since been discovered that it would apply.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for the administrative denial was incoherent list that may have had some items on there that wouldn't apply to the Bragg grant.
Mm-hmm.
And we can presume, however, that this is a new building, and I'm not picking on you. This is a new building, and therefore there are applications of the Bragg grant, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are 0 items that are listed here. That's the issue.
Yep,
Yes.
and it should have been listed.
Yeah.
System development charges, street stormwater and utility upgrades, sewer and water lateral installation, fire suppression system, and reimbursement district liens. Those are the items that are allowed in the Bragg grant. Because it's a new building, they will likely have sewer and water lateral installations, street storm water utility upgrades potentially, system development charges, but they should have been listed.
So let me be clear, I'm not poised to deny your application because it's presumed that you are going to utilize this Bragg grant to fullest extent. I'm just pointing something out that I'm sorry doesn't really have everything to do with the approval of this application currently.
I understand.
Rick?
So for purposes of clarifications with the motion, can't we include those list of items?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Do we have further questions? All right. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, just thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this? Did you want to speak? No. Okay. Just making sure that if there was anybody from the public who wanted to speak, they have the chance, but I'm not seeing that. Council, let's consider first, because these are two different items on the agenda. Item E, which is the System Development Charge Matching Grant, up to $25,000. Do you have comment on that? Brian?
I move to approve the resolution awarding Three Peaks Holdings LLC the SDC matching grant up to $25,000 to assist with SDC expenses. This approval will include an expiration date of 1 year from the date of adoption of this resolution.
Thank you, and Rick seconded. Discussion? No discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote. Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
BJ?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And Rick?
Yes.
All right, next item is the Bragg grant. Do you have discussion? Rick?
I'd like to move to approve the resolution awarding the Three Peaks Holding LLC, the Bragg, up to $50,000 to assist with fire suppression infrastructure charges. This approval will include an expiration date 1 year from the date of adoption of the resolution. I want to make a comment on that. It seems like in here, in the motion, included fire suppression and infrastructure charges, and that may be sufficient to, we're talking about a list.
Hang on
and I'm-
real quick. Is there a second on the motion?
Okay.
Brian with the second. Okay, Rick, on your comment.
So I'm wondering if the motion has adequate language in there already that references the requirements that need to be met for the Bragg. DJ, do you have?
Oh, no, I think it's well understood. That's perfect. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the Bragg grant? No? Ready to, sorry, we're ready to vote. And Rick, this was your motion.
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Abstain.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
All right. Both of those items passed. Next up, we have a couple committee appointment items. First up, the Bikeways and Walkways Committee. We have two applicants for this committee, Shane Hickman and Craig Rodenmeyer. The committee has recommended Craig Rodenmeyer. And you all should have the application materials in your packet. And it looks like we don't have anybody here. Is that right, to discuss this? It's just on us? Okay. Rick?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it appropriate for the liaison to give a two-sentence summary why this person has been recommended by the committee?
Yes. So I don't think we have anyone from the committee here to speak on it. Brian?
I'm liaison, so I will take that on. So it wasn't a unanimous vote for Craig, but there was a majority for Craig. The committee appreciated the enthusiasm that he expressed in his application, and he was a proponent for more accessibility throughout the community with bikeways. Shane, what they appreciated about him is that he's a veteran and he brought a veteran's perspective to the committee, but the committee did have a majority recommending Craig.
All right, Vanessa?
I believe on the 19th, when we revisited council procedures, we had asked for committees to provide a cover letter, just a quick cover letter on why they chose that recommendation. I don't know if that's something we've begun to implement via resolution or not, or if that's what the status of that is.
I don't think we've made it that far.
We haven't made it that far yet. In the future, you should be starting to receive those from the advisory committees.
Thank you.
Valerie?
And something I'd like to add to that, because I do think it's important that we know the makeup of the committee, because I know we don't, I mean, in this case, bikeways, walkways, but I hate to load it up with all bikeways people as opposed to, you know, kind of a rounded, you know, no different than the parks. You'd like to maybe have them in different quadrants or representing different parts of that. So that's just something that's kind of nice to know when you're making those decisions too, as a counselor. So something to keep in mind is to know the makeup of the committee currently as we make the decisions to add more people.
I agree, as well as what type of slot this person, if there's any sort of requirements for the particular seat. Okay. Well, you all have a yellow sheet in front of you that lists the two candidates' names, so please circle your preference and put your name on it and pass it down this way. Thank you. All right. So we have 7 nods here for Craig Rodenmeyer. And then we have 1 for Shane Hickman. And that must be DJ. Is this your D? Okay, sorry, I'm trying to read the names. I believe you're the only one with a name that starts with a D, so that must be you. Okay, so is there a motion? Vanessa?
May we have each vote read?
All right, but I mean, the rest of them are everybody else, so it's very hard to read these. It would be fantastic if you guys would write your names out, but.
I'm sorry, did you say 7-1?
Yes, 7-1.
I missed that.
Okay, thank you. That was why I only read the 1. Is there a motion?
I
Vanessa?
will move to appoint Craig Rodenmeyer to the Bikeways and Walkways Committee.
Second from Brian. Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Valerie?
sorry.
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
How does it work that we have 2 female counselors and your names both start with V, huh? What are the chances? But Craig Rodenmeyer is appointed to the Bikeways and Walkways Committee. Next up, we have a motion to consider removing a member from the Committee on Public Art. The committee itself has requested that we remove Cynthia Sherratt from the committee due to lack of engagement and 3 missed meetings in a row. Her term is set to expire January 1st of next year. Discussion? Brian?
I move that we vote to remove Cynthia Sherratt from the Committee on Public Art.
Is there a second? Vanessa with the second. Discussion? Vanessa?
I'll speak as a liaison to this committee. This wasn't a motion that was made lightly. There was a lot of deliberation around this, and it was difficult for that committee to come to that conclusion. So I just want that known, that this was not an easy decision for them to make.
Thank you. Further discussion? All right, Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, I think it's time for public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not two individuals. Council may consider items brought up during this time later in our agenda during matters from mayor, council, and staff. The meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. And we have one citizen here to speak. Stephen Nelson, would you please come forward?
Thank you for allowing me to speak, everyone. I'm seeing a double standard in this city. Let me explain. Another old urban tree canopy of oaks and conifers was brutally destroyed by heavy equipment of the Copeland Company. That site and the entire property will be the Summerfield subdivision. It will be between Redwood Avenue and Elmer Nelson Lane, excuse me. About 3 years ago, I petitioned to the city to actually create a small park. Recently, I drove by and I saw an entire old grove of trees being brutally destroyed. And my heart sank because it would have made a beautiful small entry park into the Summerfield North subdivision. This is why I say there's a double standard happening in this city. It's called a tree city, and yet something like this is happening. There's no excuse for it. No one can tell me that development could not have set aside an old urban canopy. There's no excuse for this. I'm upset because I'm seeing this happening so many times. We have no right to call ourselves a tree city when we're doing this to our city, urban tree canopy. So I'm asking for all of you to seriously consider changing this behavior. The city has facilitated this behavior because of tax base. Developers basically have a green light for this kind of destruction. And I find it absolutely appalling. There is no excuse. This would have been a beautiful small park entryway into Summerfield North, and now it's brutally destroyed. Why is the city allowing this to happen? Again, I commend Councilor DJ, for agreeing to save an old canopy tree on Sand Creek. You did the right thing, sir. Awesome. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, we have a question.
Steve, I have a brief question for you, sir. Can you clarify what address you're referring to?
About the tree that was saved?
No, the purpose of the public comment.
It's the need to preserve urban canopy forest in our city.
The location.
The location of...
Summerfield North is between Elmer Nelson Lane and Redwood Avenue. And I petitioned the city over 3 years ago to consider creating a park at one end or the other. The obvious location would have been where that grove of trees was. But that is gone now, and there's no excuse for it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, review the emails. Julie?
Received emails on Rivers Democracy Act, children wearing masks during PE, the Baker City COVID-related resolution, updating landscaping codes, Boatnik, Dollar Mountain Bike Trails, the Adult Use Ordinance, Historical Buildings and Sites Commission, Redwood Empire Indian Marathon, voting to have a second reading of an ordinance, and 2 emails regarding COVID restrictions in the hospitality industry.
Thank you. All right, next up, consent agenda. DJ?
Ahem. Item A, the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the Beacon Drive water line, project number WA6409. Item B, motion approving the Development Code text amendment, Articles 4, 7, and 13, certified local communities findings of fact. Item C, motion approving the comprehensive plan map and zone map amending findings of fact, amendment findings of fact. Item D, motion approving the minutes of the city council meeting of April 21, 2021. Item E, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Committee on Public Art meeting of March 9, 2021. Item F, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Tourism Advisory Committee meeting of March 2nd, 2021. Item G, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Collaborative Economic Development Committee meeting of February 25, 2021. Item H, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Collaborative Economic Development Committee meeting of March 25, 2021. Item I, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Historic Buildings and Sites Commission meeting of March 11, 2021. Item J, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Bikeways and Walkways Committee meeting of March 9, 2021. And with that, I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Valerie, with the second. And motion to pass the consent agenda. DJ, how do you vote?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Rick? Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, matters from mayor, council, and staff. We have a review of public comment. Anything anybody wanted to say on that? Okay. Committee motions. We have a committee motion from the CEDC, Collaborative Economic Development Committee, made a motion that the City Council support the funding request from Airport Director Larry Graves for $175,000 in increments of $43,750 for the next 4 years. And that is set to be considered on our May 19th City Council meeting. The funding source would be the Industrial Loan Fund. Council liaison reports. Rob.
The Tourism Committee had a request, and I wasn't 100% clear as to whether or not they would be, their request was that they wanted to hear from Steve Sable a little bit more regularly. They felt that they haven't heard about whatever continuing marketing efforts that he's been doing since there's been no agency doing that job right now. And they may have said it would be okay if Steve were to speak at a workshop in front of the council, and that would have sufficed. But I know I've also been wondering what he's up to, and I would have rather hear from him a little more regularly than we have. But they were very clear. One of them, maybe a few of them actually said that they'd like to hear from him once a month until the DMO is up and running.
All right, anybody else? Rick?
Over the internet, I attended the AMPOC meeting, and it went very well. Valerie's the president of that, and I won't elaborate any further. She can take over. Thank you.
What meeting was that?
It's the OMPOC, which is the Oregon Metro Planning Organization Consortium, which is a consortium of all of the metropolitan planning organizations, and we're a part of the Mid-Rogue Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I'll start off quickly with the Mid-Rogue. That's where we sent the letter from Cliff Bentz asking for the earmark of the South Y. That went through. Unfortunately, and I think I emailed you, Jason, and I didn't hear back, that in the OMPOC meeting, we heard that Cliff Bentz did not believe in earmarks, so he was not going to forward our particular earmark on. And so I was going to ask if it could indeed be sent through to Fazio, who is sponsoring the bill, because he is a person who's in favor of the earmarking. So I just wanted to make sure that you had that piece of information to plan on. Through the MRMPO, it looks like we may be helping sponsor the Ride on the Rogue, which is the funding mechanism to try to get the last leg of the bicycle path to Grants Pass, because that's right now the only part that's not finished. That's going to be September 18th, so that is sponsored to happen this year. So I will tell you that, and then I'm just going to go back to the OMPOC meeting, because basically there's a lot going on right now behind the scenes in transportation, and there's like 3 huge things that are just kind of sitting out there swirling. First of all, there's what's called the FAST Act, which is what the transportation plan, which has for 2 years now has been pushed out and accepted for a year. And so this will be, I think, the 3rd one, and it's supposed to be done and passed by September 30th, which just gets the basic transportation out from the federal government. Then there's also the appropriations bill, which is earmarked. That's where they're trying to get the earmarks. And that's another transportation bill they're trying to get passed through. And then, of course, we also know about Biden's American Jobs and Infrastructure one. So there's a lot back in Washington. Transportation's a big buzzword right now. I will tell you that if there's any time for us to work on our connectivity with bicycle paths and walkways, this is the time to do it, because they have shifted more money into active transportation, bicycles, pedestrians, and transit than they ever have. So I think really, and I'm actually going to come talk to the Bikeways and Walkways Committee about making sure that going into our transportation plan and looking at what we have to work with, this is the time to get it going. And I did read the minutes about the 3 subcommittees, and 2 of them have to do with that. So I will help direct them, because there's going to be a lot of money coming down for that. So anyway, there is a lot happening in transportation right now.
Thank you. Other liaison reports? No? Okay. Moving on, matters from mayor and council. DJ.
So we have this memo that we received in regards to the caveman pool. I don't know if everybody's read it, but staff desires direction about opening up for use of the facilities for meets and practices and those kind of things, and they're looking for direction if we want to pull the trigger. I think it'd be an appropriate time if we're ready for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Valerie, then Brian.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that, because I was contacted by the swim team, and all 3, the meet time this year, because everything's been so different, is May 10th through June 16th. So they're all working kind of collaboratively, because they're also not traveling a long distance, where they're traveling as one big group, but they're really in need of a pool, because YMCA is not functioning, and especially with the up at Club Northwest, they have to get slots. So they just were asking if we could just do swim team only, if that was a possibility. So I think that it would be a good time to talk about it and push it forward.
Brian.
Yeah, I just had a question about the memo. It wasn't totally outlined as far as the incremental cost from a standard opening to an early opening, and what that difference in cost is, and that would be a factor in my decision, and if we're expected to pay for those costs, or if we're getting some sort of partnership with the school districts on that.
Mm-hmm.
So So Wendy has had a couple of conversations with both the YMCA, and there's been a number of emails over this last week that have gone back and forth between the school district's athletic director, superintendent, Sherry. They are, I mean, I'm looking at those emails. I mean, there's not a final. One of the key questions that's outstanding for the school district relates to liability insurance, and whether or not lifeguards that they would provide would be covered under that. So they're looking at that. There is certainly a motivation and a strong willingness to partner and work with the city closely. But at this very moment, there hasn't been that that direct. We do have a breakdown of the costs that the city would have. I think there was a request for a daily cost, and that's around $900 per day. It's a tough number to come up with, and especially with chlorine costs apparently are just skyrocketing right now. But that's what we'd be looking at for our costs, for the electricity and the chlorine and some of the other costs.
Okay, you said $900 a day?
Yeah.
And would it be 7 days or 5 days, or, I mean, just 900 times 30 days is 27,000. So just to give everybody a ballpark, and I'm assuming this is maybe like a month earlier than we would typically open?
Correct.
Give or take? Okay.
Yeah. It's about, not quite, yeah. It's about 3.
Okay. So maybe somewhere between 20 and 27,000 would be an estimate of the incremental cost?
Yeah, I think that's a fair number. I mean, it's just that caveat of, I don't know that the swim teams have 100% committed to us in terms of the number of days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're limiting your decision to just use for the swim teams, then obviously we're only going to be open to those when they need it. So, but that would be on the conservative end, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on the back, because you do have some costs written down, and I know I had touched base, and I know that our fiscal year operating budget is $107,721, but I also happen to know that our fiscal year ends June 30th, and then the new fiscal year starts. So is that through the end of June, or does that include the entire swim season, or how does that work?
I'll answer this one because she asked the question, and so the memo states that we do have the budget to go ahead and open early and stay within the budget for this fiscal year. And of course, we budgeted money for fiscal year 22, the next fiscal year, which would accommodate the regular costs associated with operating the pool like we have in the past.
So you're saying that the money is there, basically?
The money is there for us to open early.
Okay, all right.
The way I'm reading this, at the bottom it says plus 12,780, and then it gives a range to 7,780. We think that we would still have that remaining amount left over even if we were to open the pool. Okay, it's a little confusing with the plus and then the minus,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Brian.
So given that we would be, granting exclusive use to whatever school district wants to be involved with this, I would be more in favor of maybe some sort of match where, they're paying 50% of the cost to run the pool, and we're paying 50% since they're getting 100% of the benefit of using the pool, and the rest of our constituents are not. So I don't see why we would pay 100% of the cost when they're getting 100% of the benefit.
Other comments? Rob?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Brian, and it goes back to a week or two ago when I just kind of asked the question of whether or not there's funding in the schools. Do they normally have to pay to rent pool time? And we don't really know the answer to that, but it seems, again, since, as you said, if they're getting 100% of the benefit and the rest of our constituents are not, I can't see a reason to foot 100% of the bill.
I have a question regarding the lifeguards, because this says that they would normally use the YMCA for lifeguards. So that our costs, our estimated costs are not including lifeguards. That would be back on the district.
That is a district, that would be a district cost and a district challenge that they would have to fill.
Okay. All right, Brian has proposed splitting costs with the district. Is there interest in that? Is this something the council would like to pay 100% or drop entirely? We need to make a decision here. Valerie?
Well, I think personally the district is going to be part of the cost because they will have to have liability insurance and they will also have to pay the cost of the lifeguard. So I do think they're putting some skin in the game too. I would just as soon pay it, but that's just my personal belief.
DJ?
So it wasn't explicit, I don't think, merely implied, but we're only talking about a district contribution for the early opening period for exclusive use, is that correct? Okay, yeah, I can get behind that.
You're getting behind splitting it, or?
Yeah, some sort of district contribution, I think that's fair.
Okay, Rick?
I guess I could see going that direction, but I guess I would want the full picture with the lifeguards costs and the liability, because that just gives better information on making the decision. If the split includes the lifeguards and their liability, that's one thing, but if it's separate, then it could be out of balance.
I understand your concerns, but they want this pool open in 5 days, so I don't think we have a great opportunity to answer them. Do you have a preference on split or funding it 100% or not at all?
I'm in favor of the split.
Okay. Vanessa?
I'm in favor of splitting.
Kurt?
I agree with Brian.
Okay.
Split.
Rob? Split. Okay. And Joel?
I agree with opening the pool. It wouldn't bother me to cover the expenses except for the lifeguards and the liability, just because of the challenges everybody has faced this year and the sense of community and how we need to help each other out.
Okay, well,
And if the school has the money, then I would hope that they would come forward in the same spirit.
sounds like our council preference. We've got 6 people speaking up in favor of splitting it, so. All right, we are still in mayor council comments, and I think, Valerie, you had your hand up. Was it about this topic?
It was just basically about this topic.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to address? Rob?
Yeah, I'd like to share with the council. I would have, over the weekend, last weekend, when I realized we were going to be hearing from the DMO, Jeff Knapp, a guy from McMinnville, it just occurred to me I'd also like to hear from the Downtown Merchant Association president, and I put a call into him, but I wish he had called me back before our meeting, and I could have shared this at that time, but I had a very positive conversation with him about how the Downtown Association there works very well with the DMO, and actually the DMO, one of the DMO professionals there actually was able to secure a pretty significant grant for the Downtown Association. So they've had very good experience up there working with their DMO.
Thank you. Vanessa?
On our dais on Monday, we received a copy of the Family Emergency Preparedness Handbook. I hope you guys all take the time to read that. And I'd like to let the community know that Rogue Valley Emergency Management actually has 20,000 of those printed. So get some late night reading in and learn why it's important to plan for an emergency.
Other council comments? Valerie?
I just want to remind people to get out and vote because you have received your ballot, so you can still mail it in for another week. I'm not sure when it is, but make sure that you vote. And of course, voting yes for our public safety would be very, very important.
Well, I wanted to comment that one of our county commissioners was on a conservative radio talk show program yesterday morning, and I've sent you all an email about this with a link to what he said, but I believe he mischaracterized our role in Boatnik, and particularly my role. And so I would like to challenge that I don't believe the information he stated on the radio was accurate. We did not give authorization for Boatnik to happen, and we did not do anything to stop Boatnik either. We have a contract where they are allowed to use the park, and they have requested us to close the streets for a parade, and if Boatnik goes on or does not go on, it is 100% between the active club and the state regulations and not the city. So let me know if you have any questions about that after you see my email. Anything else? All right, staff. And I believe Jason has something. Oh, Aaron, did you want to go first?
Sure, I'll just go first. So I just wanted to apologize for the inconsistent grant application information and adult use definition. For the grant application information, we'll make sure that we do a better job of administering that so it's more efficient for you and for the grant applicants that are doing that. So we'll make sure we implement something internally to make that better. And then I'll get a memo out to council this week with regards to the adult use definition.
Thank you. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor Bristol. I actually have two quick items. The first is there is a pedestrian refuge island at 9th and H Street, right in front of the Boys and Girls Club with a flashing yellow light there. That particular refuge has been hit more times than we can count, and twice in the last 3 days. We have discussed this internally. We also reached out to the Boys and Girls Club, who implored that we remove that island, and we have done so. It really is, it was not well conceived. We are working with the Boys and Girls Club. We will be moving RRFBs to the next intersection down, which is where most people are crossing the street anyway. So we will enhance safety for the Boys and Girls Club and also reduce accidents at that intersection. But I wanted to end on a really fun note tonight. On your dais, it's Drinking Water Week. Thank you, Mayor Bristol, for the proclamation last week. But we had an amazing outpouring of artwork. I encourage all of you guys to come up to the Public Works office. We have over 100 of these plastered on our walls. So picking these 13 was incredibly difficult. I want to thank Adam and the customer service team for the work that they did picking these. They were the best that were able to meet our theme and come up with great artwork. And what I wanted to let you guys know as I go through these, I'm going to read their names and their grades, but these will be displayed in our customer service office for the next year, proudly by Kimberly and her team. They will also be, we'll be making up banners, and these will be going on our Josephine Community Transit buses. So everybody in the community will be able to share in that. They will also be used on our website intermittently as we do educational promotions. So great program for the kids. And here are our 13 winners. Mr. James Sparland in the first grade with Bigfoot. This one didn't scan quite as well. We're working on getting an enhanced version. He is actually showering with a skunk. Ivy Elseth, also of the first grade. Violet Rose, third grade. Melissa Reynoso Flores, third grade. And the theme there this whole year is there when you need it, because that's what drinking water is. We are there when you need it, and that's great. Abigail Driscoll, third grade. Caleb Yarish, fourth grade, personal favorite. Avilia Guerrera, fourth grade. This one came with a great letter from the entrant who said she was in it to win it. And she did. Annika Pelliser, fifth grade. Mila Johnson, fifth grade. Pareda Gerber, I apologize if I butchered your name, I really do, sixth grade. Got the fire in there as well as the hand washing, everything that we want to see. Here's another great one, Kayla Patton, seventh grade. Jordan Decker, eighth grade. And our final entry, Sherry Findley, 11th grade. So I wanted to share those with you and announce the winners' names. It was a great contest. There are a ton more up in the Public Works office that we'll be using, so feel free to come by and take a look at them. Thank you.
Thank you, that was fun. We have some talented artists and some good water education all at the same time. Brad?
Just a real quick update on the Loveless Park. As you may recall, a couple weeks ago, the council talked about the B Street jumps and making some improvements to those trails out there. We did send a notification to the quarter-mile radius of that. It ended up being a little over 600 people. We've gotten 4 or 5 comments back on that. They've all been positive. Also, Chad Thorson, who was here for you with the Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association, who's kind of been the champion behind this. They passed the first round with the 4-Way Foundation grant for $10,000. He presented yesterday for the second round. It was very positive, and next week they make their decision on that $10,000 for that grant for them. So we'll wait to see what other feedback we get from the community, but that's looking positive in terms of that project.
Thanks for the update. Valerie?
I was just going to say, I read in the paper today, and I'd kind of heard it, that there was a $100,000 grant also for trail development given from Travel Oregon for our Dollar Mountain. So that was exciting.
All right. No more staff comments? Rob?
So does anybody else hear the feedback in the room? Like it goes for 4 or 5 seconds and then goes off for 2 seconds?
Air conditioning unit, so we're going to try and work on that, but that's what it is. It does sound like feedback the way it's inconsistent.
Yeah, it's pretty loud up here, the humming behind us. All right. Anybody want to adjourn? DJ?
I move to adjourn.
Second. Going once, going
Second.
twice? All right. Vanessa, thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll see you next Monday.